For you guys that are fairly new to the channel, maybe within my first 10,000 subscribers to the Independent Investor channel, perhaps maybe you've been with me for a while, I just want to welcome everybody to the channel. This is going to be an important message for you guys, and for you guys that are interested in just talking about stock and, you know, the stock market on this video, you're going to have to give me a pause on this particular video, and I'm going to give you guys that really just like the short and sweet and to the point videos. I'm going to give you the answer right up front, and then you guys can kind of shut this off if you're not interested in this topic at all. But I'm going to tell you guys that I always try to come out with, in each of my videos, you know, a 10-minute piece, something that you can take away and deploy. And the message of this video, honestly, is going to be to question everything. You need to be able to scrutinize and question everything that you come across, and that includes me, okay? This is my charge for you. This is what I do. This helps me all the time. And being 41 and looking back at, you know, the generational gaps that we have, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think the thought processes are so different, none being right or wrong. But I find the challenge nowadays is that I don't remember a time where we had YouTube, Google, Facebook, Instagram, and the powers that exist therein, I think, are really they're undiscovered at this point. And so my charge for you guys is, I think a lot of the younger subscribers, they really just need to have a very, very clear path. And even some of the folks that are getting involved in the stock market, I find all too often, and I can tell by the comments that come through the channel, that they fall victim to some of these things over here that, in my opinion, just do not matter. So hopefully by the end of this video, you really have a better filter on what it is that you need to process if you're going to aspire to or consume certain content online, to make sure that you're always questioning the legitimacy of that content. Ask yourself, how will this improve upon the quality of my life, you know? And I had something come across today that really sparked this topic for me, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. It's always something that I've had in the back of my mind, you know. I've been irritated at the quality of content that comes through, and I sit back sometimes and I just say, what is it that is so appealing about this individual? Because it's almost as if the truth just doesn't matter. And something was said today. Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors, who's probably the best pure shooter in the history of the NBA, came out today on a podcast and was questioning whether or not we actually went to and walked on the moon, you know? And it kind of got me thinking. There was an after discussion about whether or not people who gravitate towards certain pieces of information or content really care so much about the truth, or they really care about, you know, the messenger that's coming across, maybe through charisma. You know, maybe they're just a likable person, and they get sometimes a pass on seeking the truth for people. And I've come to a little bit of a realization to question whether or not the truth matters. And to make this relate to the stock market now, you know, the volatility has spiked. And for a lot of you guys that are new investors, you'll kind of turn to me and say, Ryan, what do I do? I'm a new investor. You know, I was excited about investing 6 months ago, and that excitement has kind of gone away. It's out the window now. And I've got all this noise on the landscape about talking about both corporate debt and U.S. national debt. And although I do acknowledge those things as being acknowledgeable, do I think they're things that exist as far as truth or definitives in the stock market to allow you to make a decision or a reactive decision based on the information that's flowing through seemingly all of those powerful social media outlets that I've talked about? Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. And the problem is there's a lot of piling on that occurs when this stuff is starting to snowball out of control, and there's a lot of piling on and groupthink that goes on to where it almost exacerbates the discussion along, and we start to question our own goals that we're trying to reach for ourselves and what we set when we set off on our investing plan or our strategic plan that we talked about, right? And it seems very, very simple, and it all makes very, very simple sense when we start. Invest what you can, don't overexpose, dollar cost average, invest for the long term. All these things make perfect sense when you start getting involved in the stock market, but then you start getting all of these things coming through, and seemingly there's a lot of groupthink going on where they're starting to support things where the truth really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All that matters is getting on the crest of that wave and waving or riding that crest of that wave until the momentum dies off and we can get a new wave of momentum come through on a new topic to deliver to people. And I think it's almost one of those things. I wrote some of these things down here to kind of talk about what I observe as being super important to people nowadays. And me looking back at the generational gap between myself at 40, and a new 20-year-old coming up, what is important to those folks? Is it important sitting down on a YouTube message that can't be delivered within 5 minutes, and shutting it off and going to the next piece of content because we just can't take a second to listen, internalize, and maybe scrutinize a piece of content that comes out because we're always searching for that, that groupthink. It's just amazing, and it doesn't necessarily matter that the truth is being sought after. It matters the consensus that people have around a certain idea or a certain content creator, and that creates that snowball effect. And that snowball effect really starts to just muddle down what it is that's being delivered to people in way of a service, And so, when we talk about these things, do politics matter? That's really when the stock market starts to increase on its volatility, that's when everything comes to the forefront. And that's when everything starts to be sold through the news medias, right? And you guys are the recipients of that news. And that's what causes that exacerbated selling. And people really start to second guess what their program is, and it's very, very difficult to see through the fog and remain clear on your program. So it's the consensus. Is consensus important in the investing landscape? What I mean by that is, do you always have to be doing what other people are doing to make it right? And I would contend that almost the opposite of that approach is really the right approach. Does ethics matter in business anymore? I'm not really sure. I look back and it seems like making money at all cost and driving that car and having successes, that of which society deems successful, is really all that matters. And doing it ethically really is out the window, all right? And if anybody looks to challenge your ethical character, they start to become defensive, and it's just like, whoa, hold on a second. If this doesn't matter, then why does the ethical content matter at all, right? It's as if we're all pursuing something and we'll step on whoever we need to get where we need to go. Just some of those questions rhetorically that I throw out there for you guys as my audience. The 10,000 subscribers have come to the channel wanting to seek out a niche of the message. And remember what I said at the beginning, always question. If you're going to view content and consume content, that's great. You're all free to do just that. But absolutely you want to be critical of the content that you consume and sit back and always question the merits, the agenda, whether or not there's a consensus behind that message, whether or not there's a movement behind the message for the right reasons or potentially for the wrong reasons, because I see it all the time. It seems as if there's a lot of momentum behind a lot of ideas about a lot of these things. Debt, politics, we're going to be in a recession in 2019. We're going to be in a recession in 2020. All that stuff is opinion-based. And the question becomes, does opinion matter? Does opinion really matter? Or does it just matter to offer a topic around some of these things that are more momentum plays at the time? And when we start to divide the momentum plays from the clarity of your plan, they really start to separate out in your mind to where you can remember what it was and why it was you deployed your strategic plan in investing in the first place. And all this stuff that gets talked about so often, this stuff is being offered constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And, you know, from a perspective of somebody not in the millennial generation, I certainly look at the millennial generation coming up with some level of care and stewardship, in that generation is being inundated with information, whether or not they like it or not, through very, very powerful news medias. And it really is important for me to get across to the audience that if there's something said specifically on my channel that doesn't quite make sense, make sure and validate it for yourself. If there's something that just doesn't sit well with you, make sure that you validate it for yourself. Make sure that if there's something that you disagree with, that's totally okay. I kind of put up here, you know, is criticism okay anymore? It almost seems like if you're not in the groupthink crowd, you're an outlier. And when you come in and you start to question what it is that ball of momentum is that's you know, feeding this desire to be part of just a community, really kind of a baseless community in my opinion. I don't see what the hype is. And that's a pretty good word for it, is that it's just built on a lot of hype and not a lot of credibility, you know, and not a lot of ethical content in meeting people, in providing service to people. Does education mean anything now? I'm not so sure. I mean, you've got people coming out right now that's talking about how, you know, college is a waste of time, education is a waste of money, you know, you can get online and within a matter of a couple years, you can just throw down and start driving a Ferrari, you know, entrepreneurship is the only way to go. From a perspective of a guy who's been old school, and seemingly when I was younger, things seemed so much more simple, you know? If I was a 20-year-old now, I would feel nothing but pressure if I had everybody in my ear constantly telling me that this is your only option, honestly. Because let's be real, guys, there's folks on YouTube that are making more than doctors right now by providing this non-truth, non-ethical content that by nature of this snowball effect, they're making insurmountable amount of money. They're making more than brain surgeons. And it's the world we live in now. And for you guys, the real takeaway is to make sure that you have your filter sound, and make sure that if you have a solid plan and something that's contrary to that plan comes along and says, hey, you better look out, we're going to have a recession in 2019, or 2020 is right around the corner, or hey, there's too much corporate debt right now, it's going to cause a financial collapse right now, which may or may not be true, but it's at most opinion now. And should opinion matter when you're making those concrete decisions with your money? I would say rest assured that the best thing that you could ever do during times like this and times of volatility is reflect back on your plan. And I've said this many times. I'm playing defense right now, and I would expect you guys to do the same. But playing defense with your investment strategy and your investment portfolio goes so much further in the content that you consume, and always questioning the integrity of the message that's coming across. Does this person have an agenda to sell me something? Are they trying to sell me something? If they did sell me something, what are their credentials to actually sit across from me as a professional and take my money and offer me a service that's supposed to enrich my life? These are the types of questions that we really need to get to. And in closing, I just want to talk about the three things in life. Honestly, we talk about these things. You know, does the truth matter? In my opinion, it certainly does. Does everybody have the answer? Of course not. This is why we have these discussions, to always try to seek out the truth out there. You know, does the corporate debt matter? Does the noise matter? Does it matter how much momentum we put behind a certain topic? Does it matter how many followers we have that subscribe to a message before it becomes right? You know what I mean? Do opinions matter? Does content matter? Does content even matter, you guys? When we've got YouTube channels online that are just showing people, you know, self-mutilating themselves and having millions and millions of views. I don't know, there must be enough people out there that consume that content, right, and not question whether or not it's ethically moral. It seems like the landscape anymore has thrown most of the rules right out the window, and anybody is kind of free to do whatever they need to do to seek out that societal idea of success. And it's very, very scary. And I would ask each and every one of you guys to kind of play defense a little bit and focus on three things that I kind of identified here. The first two I can't really help you with. All right, life is all about time. All right, and life is all about health. I can't help you with those two things. But the third thing, hopefully this is really in one word. If you tuned into the Independent Investor channel, hopefully it's the quality that you're getting and the quality that you can take for yourself. Deploy a very simple strategy to enrich at least one slice of your life with regard to finances. Again, this is not a spiritual channel. This is not a physical health channel. I'm not talking about nutrition on the Independent Investor channel, but certainly if we can improve upon this quality thing to where we talk about, does the truth matter? Yeah, it really does, but it seems like to a lot of people, it really doesn't matter. Ask yourself, do you aspire to a message that really matters in the end? Or are we looking to enrich these pieces of our life as quickly as we can and then get out and get on with our lives? Guys, thanks a lot for tuning into this message on Does the Truth Matter? I hope this really hit home for you guys. I know it's a little bit off topic, but the more we can understand about the fundamental and the philosophical approach to the stock market, the more armored up you're going to be to enter into a landscape and deal with constant inundation about how you should second guess your plan and go with the momentum plan over here. It's constantly being pushed out to you guys, and I just want to warn you to be aware. Guys, thanks a lot. Leave your comments at the bottom of the video, man. Hit the subscribe button. You'll be notified of the future videos that we put on YouTube, and good luck in your investment future.